All right, welcome to this week's edition of the Carl Jackson Show. I'm glad you could join us today. Guys, we've got a lot to talk about. A lot has happened in the news this week. News that I think is absolutely big. News that's going to have long-term ramifications. We're going to talk about Xi Jinping's visit to the United States of America with Joe Biden, meeting with Joe Biden, also meeting with Gavin Newsom and arriving in San Francisco. We're going to talk about the Jewish rally in D.C., the March for Israel. Congress averts a government shutdown. What does that mean for you and I economically? And we'll talk about that. Also, Speaker Mike Johnson, what does that mean about him, or what does that say about him? Did Matt Gaetz and the other 7 make the right move to vacate the speakership? And also, we're going to talk about left-wing violence, pro-Hamas violence, also left-wing violence in the streets. This is Carl Jackson. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a few. All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show. Guys, this week, we saw Xi Jinping visit the United States of America. We saw the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, roll out the red carpet, if you will, for Xi Jinping. He cleaned up the city of San Francisco. Now, for those of you that watch my podcast or subscribe to my podcast, and please do so, the Carl Jackson Show at the Salem Podcast Network or wherever you go to get your podcast, you heard me speak of this earlier, but this is a very big deal. I believe that Xi Jinping is winning a Cold War against the United States because of the elites in Washington, D.C., the Democrat elites in Washington, D.C., and dare I say also the one that is running a shadow campaign, that is Governor Gavin Newsom of California. So for those of you that may not recall it, I want to play this audio clip for you once again because it should never be forgotten. This is the governor of California, a state that is completely run down, a state whose crime and homelessness is absolutely rampant. As a matter of fact, you had the 10 freeway, a portion of the 10 freeway in California burned down by an arson, one of these homeless camps that are underneath one of the freeways. Absolutely insane. But yet, Gavin Newsom can't seem to do anything to clean up California except when a communist dictator and other foreign leaders come to visit California for their APEC conference. But here's what Governor Gavin Newsom had to say when he got criticized about cleaning up San Francisco ahead of Xi Jinping's, the Chinese Communist Party's dictator. All right. So he cleaned up San Francisco for Xi Jinping, but not for regular residents. Here's what Gavin Newsom had to say after being criticized for doing just that. Let's roll the tape. Por favor, Gabe.
Folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
Okay, so that's Governor Gavin Newsom. It is true. It is true that he cleaned up the city for Xi Jinping. It's as simple as that. This is a man who is blatantly telling the California voters he does not care about you. This is a man that is putting the California voters, if you will, in your place. Guys, the script has been flipped, as they say. This is a government of, for, and by the people, not of, for, and by the politicians. And yet, California voters have gotten things twisted. And frankly, I'm not sure that I can blame Gavin Newsom. If you're going to allow your politicians to rule over you, then this is exactly what you're going to get. Gavin Newsom was willing. I just want you to sit and think about this for a second. This is extremely important. We are living in a post-constitutional America. These left-wing communists, these fascists, in Gavin Newsom's case, this authoritarian, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic in saying just that. I want you to sit and think about this. This is a leader in Gavin Newsom that took your tax dollars and cleaned up the city for a dictator that kills people like Uyghurs in his own country. He cleans up the city for him, but he won't clean up the city for you, although you're paying for it. And he tells you directly to your face, and you continue to vote for this guy and put him in office. Frankly, I think the voters should be ashamed. Now I want you to see this. This is Xi Jinping visiting the city of San Francisco. I want you, before we even start the video game, just a still frame. For those of you that are watching this television show, just look at the still frame. Where do you think you're at? Look at those flags lining the streets as Xi Jinping visits San Francisco. When I first saw this still frame, I thought that was China. I thought that was China. And then I was reminded, oh, no. Xi Jinping visited San Francisco, and what he was greeted with were Chinese communist flags, in my opinion, all right? All these people standing around waving Chinese flags. Honestly, we should probably know who these people are. They're probably spies. I don't know, but I'm guessing there might be some in there. What he should have been met with were American flags everywhere he could see, as far as his eyes could see, lining these streets. Marines lined up, lining these streets. And you know what? He doesn't like protests. They wanted to make sure no homeless people or protesters were around. Well, there should have been protesters around, in my opinion, because this is America. This is not China. This is not a communist nation. As much as the left wants it to be a communist nation, we are not there yet, and God forbid we ever get there. But he should have been met with protesters. He should have been met with American flags, and he should have seen not our trans soldiers, for God's sakes, but some of our biggest, our best, setting still on guard, looking him directly in the eye as his motorcade passed by. The protesters with signs that said FAFO, and I know many of you know what I'm talking about. All right, now, let's do this. Let's go ahead and roll this video, and then I'm going to tell you about the ramifications of this meeting. China is winning the Cold War against the United States thanks to Joe Biden, thanks to people like Gavin Newsom and the entire Democrat Party, as well as, in my opinion, Barack Obama, who is still in charge of the White House. Let's roll the tape. Por favor, Gabe. Okay. Man, were you inspired? There was an article that I read from Unheard. Xi Jinping emerges as the winner from San Francisco. Before I get to that, let me just share you some of the things that were on the table during Xi Jinping's visit. There was common ground, or what transpired with his visit with Joe Biden. So there was common ground made on the climate. I want to get into that. Joseph Biden and Xi Jinping agreed to tackle fentanyl trafficking. We'll talk about that a little bit. After a tense period, military communications will be restored between the two nation states, the United States of America and China. And also talks will continue just in general because those had shut down. And great news, pandas, as envoys of friendship, may continue. We only have 4 more inside of the United States, I believe, inside of the Atlanta Zoo, and they're going to be shipped back shortly here. But Xi Jinping, in his great kindness, might go ahead and send some pandas back to San Diego Zoo, so we'll get into that. Guys, we are a laughingstock. We are a joke. Xi Jinping is coming to the United States of America, and he's looking at Joe Biden, and he's looking at our resolve, and he's thinking to himself, I cannot believe these people. I cannot believe how weak they are. He cannot believe how he can just run over the United States in a post-Trump era. This is absolutely insane. Common ground on climate change. Really? Let me get to this first. This article appeared in the Unheard. I'm sorry. Very good. All right, so this is by Joel Kotkin. The Chinese premier has the West right where he wants them. Kotkin warns Xi Jinping should have entered San Francisco's APEC conference with his tail between his legs, but instead has emerged as something closer to the king of the world. And indeed, that appears to be what we saw there. China may be experiencing what he describes as tepid growth, which is absolutely true. Bloated real estate market because they built all of these homes and these communities where no one is staying in. Absolutely insane. Low industrial production and an increasingly alienated youth. If you might remember, I'm not sure exactly how long ago it was, maybe just short of a year ago, you had many youth in China starting to stand up and protest some of the COVID lockdowns that remained in China. And he was losing the youth. They had to loosen the restrictions, if you will, in China. Yet he comes here to the United States of America, and he's able to run shop. This guy should be bowing down to us, not vice versa. The problem is there aren't any impressive Western leaders for Xi Jinping to look at. Who is he looking at? Is there anyone in the UK? Is there anyone in the United States? Is there a Churchill? Is there a Franklin Roosevelt? Is there a Ronald Reagan? Is there a Trump? No, Xi Jinping is seeing that he can run all over the United States. And frankly, he's just had a win with climate change. I think Xi Jinping is in disbelief. I don't think he can believe that the United States, the big dog in the world, would bow the knee to him. And we're doing exactly that. Meanwhile, he's complicit in the Israel-Hamas attacks. He's complicit in the Russia-Ukraine war. And here we are bending the knee to Xi Jinping. When we get back from the break, we'll have more on this. This is the Carl Jackson Show. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. This is your weekly dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, all right, now, so Biden met with Xi Jinping, and it was an utter disaster, in my opinion. I really believe that Xi Jinping, again, as I stated earlier, is in disbelief. Xi Jinping is eating our lunch. I think I recall Biden saying at one point in time that, come on, man, China will eat their lunch. Well, it's the exact opposite. Xi Jinping is eating our lunch. Listen to this headline from Fox News. Biden sets AI technology back in a deal with China. So President Biden is set to strike a deal with China that would limit the use of artificial intelligence in nuclear weapons. Biden and Xi will agree to limit AI use in the systems that control and deploy nuclear weapons, as well as the technology use in autonomous weapon systems such as drones. And then BizPac Review states, but Biden's plan to strike the deal with the Chinese leader has sparked concerns from some experts. Now, why is that? Well, the experts say this is not the big win for the U.S. that Biden may think it is. Quote, this is an incredibly poor decision. This, according to Christopher Alexander, he's a chief analytics officer, a Pioneer Development Group. He says, to begin with, China lags behind the U.S. in AI capabilities. So in essence, what we're doing is weakening ourselves to allow China to catch up. You guys might remember this. This is why I suspect we're looking at Barack Obama's third term with a complete and utter idiot that is in charge in the White House, kind of running it. He and his administration. If you remember, it was Barack Obama that made this agreement with Putin, the whole reset and all this kind of nonsense, and we wanted to weaken our own nuclear system, and essentially Russia was like, oh yeah, cool with us, because they wanted a reset with Russia. Meanwhile, you have the left, arguing that it was Trump that was compromised with Russia, and despite the fact that all of that was proven to be nonsense. They still roll out this nonsense about Trump being being compromised by Russia. It makes absolutely no sense, except that it does, because this is how the left rolls. You know what else happened? And this is an utter disaster, and I got so much to get to. It's absolutely insane. I don't know how this is possible in a normal TV show, but we're going to cover it. But here are the wins that Xi Jinping had. I just mentioned the AI win. That is absolutely insane. But again, we're talking about Xi Jinping is looking around and he's like, I can't believe this. I mean, there are no Western leaders, including the big dog, the United States, that are stopping me. So China wins on climate change. Listen to this. Strategically, Xi has the West exactly where he wants it, and China wants it. China agreed to U.S. climate proposals in San Francisco. The demands for more wind and solar energy, as well as electric vehicles, assure an industrial supremacy for the country that produces more greenhouse gases than the entire developed world put together. Did you hear that? We're making a deal with China because we want to win on quote unquote climate change by making a deal with the country that literally has the most greenhouse gases, period, than the entire developed world combined. This is a complete and utter joke. This should tell anyone in the listening audience that this is all about control. It has nothing to do with climate. Democrats want the issue of climate change to stoke fear into the voters and to move towards this controlled type environment, this controlled state by using fear. And it's working. Sadly, many of the next generations are coming up in fear of climate change and willing to listen to whatever the government says, what type of car you can drive, so on, etc. And that's exactly what's happening. Meanwhile, China is the major benefactor. They're winning on this front. It says here, the country, China already boasts a huge lead in solar battery production and increasingly dominates the production of rare earth minerals or elements, which are critical to wind turbines, solar panels, and the electric vehicles, all of which are a joke. Guys, these electrical vehicles, many of them, I would encourage you to go online and just look at how much earth needs to be unearthed for one battery with these major earth movers that run on diesel fuel. Just for one battery. The strip mining of land is absolutely insane. You have lithium, cobalt inside of these batteries. Where are you going to store these batteries? Building an electric vehicle does more damage to society or to the environment in the production phase and the disposal phase than any ICE engine out there. It's absolutely amazing. The article goes on, as American EV firms struggle with production and supply chains, China's Warren Buffett-backed BYD, Warren Buffett knows where to make his money, has urged as the world's top electric vehicle manufacturer with big export ambitions, while Tesla focuses much of its future growth at its Chinese factories. Meanwhile, the net zero policies of the West are already destroying Germany, unraveling their industrial economy, which is losing much of its industrial base, notably in chemicals and vehicles, in chemicals and vehicles alike. So basically, China is using the useful idiots in the West in order to become the world's global hegemony. That's exactly what they're doing. In addition, you had the Biden administration agree to tackle fentanyl trafficking. Now, if you believe that China is in a cold war against us, as I do you really believe that this is going to come to fruition? This was reported on by the BBC. Says the two sides said they would cooperate to fight drug trafficking, and China agreed to crack down on chemical companies in order to stem the tide of illegal fentanyl into the U.S., which has contributed to a rise in overdose deaths. You're talking about 100,000 Americans that are murdered every year as a result of fentanyl deaths. And I know people are taking this stuff voluntarily, but this stuff is coming from China. They're importing it through Mexico, And this is a Cold War against us. Make no doubt about it. The powerful synthetic opioid played a role in around 75,000 U.S. deaths last year. I believe it was 100,000 the year before. Chinese manufacturing companies are a source not only of the drug itself, but of precursor chemicals that can be combined to make it as well. All right. And then also, after a tense period, military communications will resume. So we're going to resume military communications with China. We want to know what they're doing. They're telling us what they're doing. Remember, they show us exactly what, while we talk, China shows us exactly what they're doing. They show us exactly what they're doing. You guys may have seen a podcast of mine with Stephen Mosier, in which he outlined this Cold War that China is waging against the United States of America, and we're totally oblivious. But not just against the United States, but some of our friends, some of our allies, like Israel, for instance. How China supplied the communications for Hamas, making it very difficult, if not impossible, for Israel, for the IDF to be able to pick up sensitive communications before the attack. That the Hamas leaders consulted with Xi Jinping. The same could be true. The same is said, or the same is true about Vladimir Putin in Russia before he decided to invade Ukraine in February of 2022. He went and consulted with Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping is looking at all of these people, all of these leaders, including Joe Biden, as useful idiots for global dominance, for his global dominance. And sadly, he's succeeding. So it says here, after a tense period, military communication will resume. The two countries agreed to resume military-to-military communication, a step that was high on Americans' wish list. It should have been high on Xi Jinping's wish list, quite frankly. The military links were cut by China last year after then U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Then you had the relations that deteriorated after the Chinese spy balloons were discovered when they traversed all across the United States on Joseph R. Biden's watch, as we did absolutely nothing. And then the CCP collected data on our military bases while we sat by and watched, while our military, while our commander-in-chief just sat by and watched. Absolutely astonishing. They did say talks will continue, all right? So while there were several specific points of agreement, the mere fact that a meeting happened, they thought President Biden thought it was a good thing. They shook hands and considered that a positive sign. This, according to the BBC's North America editor, Sarah Smith. Oh, and then pandas as envoys of friendship will continue as well. After the meeting, Mr. Xi hinted that Beijing is open to sending more pandas to U.S. zoos, China, where the cuddly bears are seen as a national treasure. All right, so they took away some of the pandas out of I can't believe this. Out of American zoos. But in an effort to be cordial with the United States of America, apparently Xi Jinping is willing to let a few more panda bears go to San Diego Zoo. Insane. Carl Jackson will be back. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Please subscribe to my podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. The Carl Jackson Show, again, wherever you go to subscribe. All things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Getter, we're on Truth Social. Wherever I am, that is at The Carl Jackson Show. Guys, there was a march for Israel in Washington, D.C. that occurred earlier this week, and it was an amazing rally, and we're going to show you some video here, and I want to juxtapose that to this riot, this pro-Hamas riot that occurred at the DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. So we have some video of that as well, but there was a major difference between the rallies. But before we get to the video, I do want to say this. Guys, there's absolutely no excuse, in my opinion, for the Jewish people, Jewish Americans in particular, to vote for the Democrat Party ever again. Ever again. I think Jews have typically voted with the Democrat Party because the Democrat Party was the party of civil rights. or at least they believed the Democrat Party was the party of civil rights. And so they gravitated towards the Democrat Party because of the suffering of the Holocaust, and because of the suffering that they had been going through for centuries and centuries and centuries, all the way back to thousands of years, all the way back to biblical times. Okay, and so I think they gravitated towards the Democrat Party. Not to mention, it was Harry Truman that officially, if you will, commissioned the state of Israel, and so the Jews seem to gravitate there. But the Democrat Party does not respect Jews. The Democrat Party is not a respecter of persons. The Democrat Party is not a compassionate party. It is an evil party that is obsessed with money, that is obsessed with power, that is obsessed with control. And one of the ways in which they control people, and it's coming home to roost, we can see it. We can see it on college campuses all across the United States, all across the United States of America. They have to divide people. They cannot unite Americans based upon their ideas. What are the ideas from the Democrat Party? To destroy the rule of law? To use Hamas-style abortion? I don't understand why the right can't defeat the left on this argument. We don't want Hamas-style abortion with babies that can survive outside of the womb, literally having and excuse me for being vulgar here, but having a vacuum stuck in the back of their necks. That is Hamas-style terrorism. And you're telling me we can't defeat that argument? They're the extremists on the issue of abortion. It is we in the conservative movement that love babies, that love life. And you have over 70% of Americans, or approximately 70% of Americans, that agree that at least when it comes to about 3 months period of time, babies in the womb should be able to survive. And you're telling me we can't win that argument? What do Democrats stand for? Free speech? We realize that's not true with all the censorship. Taxation. They want you to work as they take more of your money. As a matter of fact, we'll get into this government shutdown and how it was averted, and that whole PSYOPs campaign against us, against taxpayers. Immigration, open borders. Look at what that's wrought with some of the riots that we see going on right here in the United States. Special interest aliens, over 70,000 special interest aliens. We have a weakened military as a result of the Democrat Party. We're paying buttloads of money for groceries and gasoline as a result of the Democrat Party. You have fewer people that are unable to buy homes inside of the United States, thanks to the Democrat Party. This is a power-hungry party that absolutely doesn't care about people and lives and thrives on dividing people. I can't believe that you seriously have people inside of the United States, or I can believe it, but it saddens me to know it, I should say, that would side with terrorists over our best ally in the Middle East. Here's a young woman that attended the March for Israel. We'll play this video for you. But I do want to share this real quick. Jewish people, in my opinion anyway, it's time to abandon the Democrat Party. They hate you. They hate you. All of this march for Israel, as great as it was, the largest crowd ever of Jews to gather, at least in the United States, perhaps around the world. Nearly 300,000 left the place spick and span afterwards. All of this will matter for naught if you continue to vote for the Democrat Party. If you continue to fund and donate to these left-wing institutions, these colleges and these universities that hate you, that are anti-American. If they're anti-American, it means that they're anti-Zionist as well. You have to keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and roll this video. This is a young Jewish woman whose grandfather was killed on October 7th. Her grandmother apparently is being held hostage. Here's what she has to say as Mary, a reporter from the Daily Signal, visited with her.
I don't get to be sad. I don't get to cry because I need to fight. My grandmother is kidnapped in Gaza. Back on October 7th, my grandfather, David Moshe, was murdered on that day in front of our eyes. I woke up from the sirens in Tel Aviv. I immediately called my grandma just to make sure they're okay. She told us nothing to worry about. They sleep inside the shelter because they're already old and they want to feel safe. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from my mother that my grandparents' neighbor, Bracha, she was murdered, and the terrorists took her phone and just live stream it on Facebook. My uncle also lived in the kibbutz. The terrorists invaded their house. He has 5 children. They couldn't shoot inside because they were like a wall. So they just physically fought with him on the handle of the shelter. And he fought for his life for hours. They just started to think how to survive.
Now, I want to. So you saw a peaceful protest. You saw a Daily Signal reporter out there giving interviews. She did several of these interviews. You can check them out at the Daily Signal, and some great interviews, by the way. But I want to juxtapose that to what we saw at the DNC headquarters. And I assure you, before we go to this party, I said that the Democrat Party, they want money, they want power, but there's something else that's very important for you to understand. This is a party of violence. We saw the violence that occurred in the summer of 2020 with the BLM and the Antifa riots. And frankly, I believe that the former President Donald Trump should have implemented the Insurrection Act, just like George H.W. Bush did in 91 or 92 with the Los Angeles riots. I was a young man growing up in Los Angeles at the time, and I got to tell you, it was a crazy sight to see because my grandmother lived in South Central Los Angeles. At the time, we lived in Long Beach. My father and my mom had recently passed away a couple of years prior, but we lived in Long Beach. And I remember traveling to different parts of the city throughout Los Angeles, where you could see the National Guard, but particularly in South Central Los Angeles, which was the epicenter where the Los Angeles riots began. Reginald Denny, and you guys might remember that, him being pulled out of the vehicle. This is a party of violence. The left is a party of violence. They will divide us. They will use violence in order to obtain power. That's exactly what they're doing. So here's what they've taught their next generation how to behave. This is what happened at the DNC headquarters. I have a sneaky suspicion many J6 protesters are still being hunted down by the FBI today. You have Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even in Washington, D.C., head of the Proud Boys, happened to be black. He was being called a white supremacist, got sentenced to 22 years. Ray Epps, we don't know who he was working for. Nothing. Nada. Here are pro-Hamas Democrat protesters invading or attacking the DNC headquarters. Let's go ahead and roll the video here, Gabe, por favor.
So look, I just got thrown. People getting thrown down the stairs. People getting thrown down the stairs. Yo.
All right, so this is the left. How many of those people do you think will actually be going to jail or spending serious time in jail? They can't. You know why? And they won't. They won't, more than likely. You know why? Because those are Democrat voters. Those are Democrat voters. Guys, you've heard it said that we live in a two-tier justice system. There isn't a two-tier justice system inside of the United States. I believe many on the right are being generous by using that term. There is no two-tier justice system. If you are on the right, you will be punished to the full extent of the law. If you're on the left and it benefits the narrative of the left, guess what? You can almost get away with murder. This is Carl Jackson. We'll be back to talk government shutdown. All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, or welcome back from the break. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my podcast. Wherever you go to get your podcast, please subscribe to The Carl Jackson Show and follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. I'm most active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So you can find me there. I'm also on Truth Social and Getter. Okay, guys, so we had a government shutdown. I do want to get to this. This is the era of big government. We have to be extremely careful, including about our own candidates. Guys, I said that I would reserve judgment on Speaker Mike Johnson for after the 17th. Well, he was able to avert a government shutdown or avoid a government shutdown before the 17th. And so far, I'm thoroughly unimpressed. Thoroughly unimpressed. Guys, the Bible teaches us that the borrower is slave to the lender. There is a big disconnect, in my opinion, and I say this as a Christian, but there is a disconnect in the Christian community and in the religious community when it comes to politics in the Bible. And no, there isn't a separation of church and state. That was a letter from Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Church. All right, so there is no separation of church and state, but we are not a theocracy. We don't have a state religion. You're free to practice, believe whatever you want to believe inside of the United States, as long as it doesn't threaten others' lives. All right, so this is a free country in that sense. Now, we've lost a lot of freedom, and that is a scary thing, but we're still the best country in the entire world, even though Joe Biden is working very hard to turn that around. But I'm going to get to Mike Johnson in just a sec. But one of the things that happened this week where my jaw absolutely dropped, and guys, let me just be open and honest. I've never been a big fan of Nikki Haley. I did a podcast on this before. I think she's obviously a very smart woman, a very accomplished person. I think she did a great job as the UN ambassador under the former president Donald Trump. But I do believe that Nikki Haley takes us back to, in my opinion, George W. Bush era, where we continue to grow the size and the scope of government, and we get into confrontations and conflicts around the world, some of which we have no business getting involved in. I believe this is Nikki Haley. And also I believe that she kowtows to the woke left. She seems to play the female card a little too much. There was after the last debate, she did a interview with some podcasters, and the name escapes me right now, where she basically attacked Vivek Ramaswamy. And those of you that know me know that I'm not the biggest fan of Vivek as well, but I appreciate some of the things that he brings to the table. I appreciate his confrontation on some of the big issues that need to be tackled, and I appreciate him taking on the establishment. I do believe we have better candidates in the race, and that is Trump and Ron DeSantis. Frankly, that will do the same thing, although DeSantis is not as great vocally. But Nikki Haley said something or did something this week that absolutely should make your jaw drop, as it did mine, and absolutely terrify you. This is the big government candidate, Nikki Haley. I want you to hear what she had to say. Now, she's since tried to walk it back. But she said this on Fox News, all right? And she also said it on a podcast, and she doubled down on the podcast. So she's convinced on this issue, but she's walking it back for political expediency. Guys, we are $33 trillion plus into debt. We have a weaponized deep state, a DOJ. We cannot go back to an era of big government. We have to cut government spending. We have to cut government bureaucracy. And in my opinion, Nikki Haley isn't one to do that. And when left to her devices, this is what happens. Gabe, let's go ahead and roll the video.
When I get into office, the first thing we have to do, social media accounts, social media companies, they have to show America their algorithms. Let us see why they're pushing what they're pushing. The second thing is every person on social media should be verified by their name. That's, first of all, it's a national security threat. When you do that, All of a sudden, people have to stand by what they say, and it gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots. And then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say.
Accountability.
And they know their pastor and their family members going to see it. It's going to help our kids, and it's going to...
Okay, so that was big government Nikki Haley. And as Ron DeSantis pointed out, Governor Ron DeSantis, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, James Madison, that wrote the Federalist Papers, did so under pseudonyms. You have plenty of people that exist today, many in conservative media, as a matter of fact, that remained anonymous so that the left wouldn't come attack their homes. You know, like they did the Supreme Court justices, stand out in front of their homes and go crazy. If they would do that with Supreme Court justices, imagine what they would do to you. Do you guys remember when the left showed up at Tucker Carlson's house when I believe he was in studio and his wife and his children were home alone? So this is the reason why some conservatives choose to remain anonymous, because the left is violent, Nikki Haley. The left is violent. And not to mention, we also have a weaponized DOJ who have arrested many people that attended the J6 protest. Many of them that did not step foot inside of the Capitol. You have Brandon Straka of the Walkaway movement, who literally filmed for, I don't know, a few minutes or so, people going into the Capitol building from outside, and he was dragged through the mud, dragged through the court process, forced to cop to certain crimes in order to get his life back. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, you don't get rid of anonymity. We don't need big government. What if you want to do? If you'd like to do anything, Nikki Haley, we need to treat these big tech companies like we do telephone companies, common carriers, and put everybody on an equal playing field. They should not be allowed to censor one group over the other. But there's Nikki Haley. All right. So anyway. Don't have much time left in this segment. Let me talk about this government shutdown. Guys, how are you feeling? How are you feeling economically? How are you feeling when you go to the grocery store, when you fill up your car with a tank of gas, if you can afford to do so nowadays? How are you feeling? Well, I want you to know that our new speaker, Mike Johnson, you know, the one, and guys, listen, I wasn't a fan of Kevin McCarthy. Make no bones about it. I wanted another speaker. Then Jim Jordan run after Matt Gaetz started that process of vacating the speakership. I didn't think it was the right move at the time, but so be it. All right. I thought we should have went with Chip Roy's, Byron Donald's plan. And that was to cut spending overall by 30%. That was a temporary measure that other Republicans, for whatever reason, did not want to go with. So they decided to vacate the speakership chair, Matt Gaetz and the other Gang of Seven. And listen, I'm a fan of Matt Gaetz, but obviously we did not get what we wanted. We went from Kevin McCarthy to Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson, at least so far, has been much of the same. He's more clever, it seems to me, on social media and in interviews, a little more quick, but that's it. The spending will remain. I honestly cannot believe what we are witnessing here. This hat tip to the Daily Wire. The Senate passed a short-term spending bill on Wednesday night that will continue to fund the government at current levels until early 2024. Now, for those of you in the listening audience or viewing audience, I want to ask you this question. We're in an election cycle. Do you really believe that Republicans in January and February will all of a sudden grow the courage that they need in order to cut spending when they want to get reelected, many of them? I hope so, but I'm extremely doubtful. As a matter of fact, I don't think it's going to happen. Guys, we didn't cut anything. We didn't stop anything. The left continues to march on despite the fact that they have in my opinion, a dementia patient in the White House and a managerial state. We didn't stop anything. We did all of that drama and theater, at least at this point, for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And let me bring this to your attention, because big government continues to grow even under Republican leadership in the House. Listen to this headline. NSA compiles glossary of radical woke terms for employees to utilize. We're going to continue to fund that? You know, the HHS is doing the same. Their employees now are being forced to use pronouns that are contrary to science. We're funding that. We're funding the FBI and their new facility. We're funding IRS agents when we have control of the purse. Guys, if we don't fight now, when? Next year? I doubt it. Guys, listen, this has been a fun show. Appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.